A Mustang foal grew up with a loyal dog as his unlikely brother. Years later, what he did for his canine companion left everyone in tears. Get ready for an extraordinary story of friendship that crossed species boundaries and proved that family isn't always defined by blood. Sarah Miller wiped sweat from her brow as she scanned the barren Nevada landscape. At 35, she had spent over a decade rescuing Mustangs from drought-stricken regions. But this emergency call was different. A pregnant mare had been separated from her herd during a wildfire and was now trapped in a narrow canyon. "We need to move fast," Sarah told her assistant, Mark. "That fire is less than 3 miles away." They located the exhausted mare huddled against a rock wall, her sides heaving with contractions. The timing couldn't have been worse. "She's in labor," Sarah said, approaching slowly. "We can't move her now." For the next hour, they worked to keep the terrified horse calm as she delivered her foal, a tiny colt with a distinctive white star on his forehead. As the newborn struggled to stand on wobbly legs, the sound of distant helicopters signaled the fire was changing direction. "We need to evacuate now," Mark warned, already loading equipment. The mare, weakened from the difficult birth and smoke inhalation, collapsed as they tried to lead her to the trailer. Despite their desperate efforts, she died within minutes, leaving her newborn orphaned as the fire approached. "We can't leave him," Sarah insisted, wrapping the trembling foal in blankets and carrying him to safety. Back at Willow Creek Sanctuary, Sarah's small rescue operation in the Sierra Nevada foothills, the orphaned colt faced uncertain odds. Without a mother's milk, many orphaned foals didn't survive. "We'll bottle feed him every 2 hours," Sarah told her volunteers, mixing a special formula. "I'm calling him Phoenix, born from the fire." That night, as Sarah dozed in the barn beside the vulnerable foal, she was startled awake by a soft whine. Max, her 3-year-old border collie, had entered the stall and was gently nuzzling the sleeping colt. "No, Max," Sarah whispered, moving to separate them. "He's too fragile." But to her amazement, Phoenix responded by stretching his muzzle toward the dog. Max lay down beside the foal, his body providing warmth. The colt's breathing steadied as he pressed against his unlikely companion. Sarah watched in disbelief as Max began gently licking Phoenix's face, the same nurturing behavior she'd seen mother dogs show puppies. The foal relaxed completely under the dog's care. Against conventional wisdom, Sarah decided not to separate them. Throughout the night, she observed their extraordinary bond forming. Max alerting her when Phoenix needed feeding, cleaning the foal, and providing constant companionship. By 6 months of age, Phoenix had transformed from a fragile orphan into a spirited colt with a shining coat and boundless energy. His growth far outpaced Max, but their bond only strengthened as their size difference increased. Every morning began the same way. Max would race to Phoenix's paddock, barking excitedly until Sarah opened the gate. The border collie would then dash between Phoenix's legs, initiating their daily game of chase and play. "It's like they've created their own language," Sarah remarked to visitors who came to witness the unusual friendship. Max taught Phoenix to play fetch, though the colt's version involved picking up sticks and dropping them rather than retrieving them properly. Phoenix, in turn, showed Max how to find the juiciest patches of grass, lowering his head beside his canine brother as they grazed together. Most remarkable was how they communicated. When Phoenix became too rambunctious, Max would nip gently at his fetlocks, causing the colt to immediately settle. When Max wanted attention, he'd bark once, and Phoenix would lower his head to nuzzle his friend. Their sleeping arrangement remained unchanged. Max curled against Phoenix in the stall each night, the colt often resting his head protectively near his smaller companion. "They're convinced they're the same species," Dr. Jensen observed during a routine check. "I've seen dogs bond with horses before, but nothing like this. They're genuinely behaving like brothers." As Phoenix approached his first birthday, Sarah faced a decision. Most yearlings at the sanctuary were introduced to the rehabilitation herd to learn proper horse behavior before potential adoption or release. Would separating Phoenix from Max undo the progress they'd made? Let's try a short introduction, she decided. We'll see how he responds to other horses. The initial meeting with the herd proved disastrous. Phoenix panicked, running the fence line calling for Max, who had to be physically restrained from rushing to his friend's aid. The older horses, sensing something different about the young Mustang, kept their distance or pinned their ears disapprovingly. He doesn't know he's a horse, Sarah realized with growing concern. He thinks he's part of Max's pack. After several failed attempts to integrate Phoenix with the herd, Sarah made an unprecedented decision. She converted one of the small pastures into a special enclosure for Phoenix, adding a custom dog door so Max could come and go freely. 3 years passed in harmonious routine at Willow Creek. Phoenix grew into a magnificent young stallion with the distinctive looks of his wild heritage, though his behavior remained uniquely influenced by his canine upbringing. Max, now 6, showed the first touches of gray around his muzzle but maintained his energetic devotion to his equine brother. Their days followed a comfortable pattern. Mornings spent playing in Phoenix's pasture, afternoons with Max, accompanying Sarah on sanctuary chores while Phoenix watched from his enclosure, evenings reunited for what the volunteers called dinner dates. Everything changed when a wealthy benefactor visited the sanctuary. "That Mustang is extraordinary," Jefferson Brooks remarked, watching Phoenix perform dog-like behaviors at Max's guidance. "I've never seen anything like him." Brooks, a renowned horse trainer with a large breeding operation in Kentucky, made Sarah an offer that the struggling sanctuary couldn't refuse, a donation large enough to save several dozen more Mustangs in exchange for acquiring Phoenix for his program. He'd have the best care possible, Brooks promised, and his unusual intelligence would make him invaluable for our equine therapy programs. Sarah was torn. The sanctuary needed the funding desperately, and Phoenix deserved more space than their small facility could provide, but separating him from Max seemed unthinkable. "They've never been apart," she explained to Brooks. "I'm not sure Phoenix would adapt." "Horses are adaptive by nature," Brooks assured her, "and we can send regular updates. He'll adjust." After agonizing deliberation, Sarah made the heartbreaking decision. Phoenix would go to Kentucky, and the donation would save countless other wild horses from slaughter or starvation. Explaining to the animals proved impossible. The day the transport trailer arrived, Max seemed to sense something was wrong. He paced anxiously as Phoenix was haltered and led toward the unfamiliar vehicle. When Phoenix balked at entering the trailer, Max barked sharply, their signal for encouragement. Trusting his canine brother, Phoenix stepped inside. The door closed before Max could follow. The border collie's distress was immediate and devastating. He howled and scratched at the trailer as it pulled away, then raced alongside until it reached the main road. For days afterward, Max refused food and spent hours staring down the driveway, waiting for Phoenix's return. In Kentucky, Phoenix faced his own adjustment struggles. Brooks reported that the young stallion wasn't eating, paced constantly, and kept making an unusual snorting sound, his attempt at barking for his missing brother. "He keeps searching for something," Brooks reported by phone, "and he's not bonding with any of our horses. It's like he doesn't recognize them as his own kind." Weeks passed with little improvement. Phoenix lost weight and condition. His bright spirit dimmed as he went through the motions of training without enthusiasm. At Willow Creek, Max similarly declined, becoming withdrawn and spending hours in Phoenix's empty stall. "We've made a terrible mistake," Sarah finally admitted after 2 months of separation. "This isn't working for either of them." Brooks reluctantly agreed. "I've never seen a horse grieve like this. It's like he's lost part of himself." Arrangements were made for Phoenix's return, but before the transport could be organized, disaster struck the sanctuary. Heavy spring rains sent flash floods roaring through the foothills, cutting off road access to Willow Creek. Power lines went down, and Sarah lost communication with the outside world. As water levels rose around the sanctuary buildings, the situation became desperate. The horses were moved to higher ground, but supplies were limited. Worse, Max had disappeared during the chaos, last seen heading toward the creek that had now become a raging torrent. 1,000 miles away in Kentucky, Phoenix became increasingly agitated as the storm systems moved eastward. Staff reported the stallion pacing frantically, calling out with his distinctive bark-like nicker, and staring westward as if sensing something no human could perceive. On the third night, Phoenix broke through his stall door and disappeared into the darkness, heading west toward an unknown destination, pulled by a bond that defied explanation. Phoenix's escape sent shockwaves through Brooks's prestigious Kentucky facility. Search parties combed the surrounding countryside for days without success. "It's like he vanished," Brooks told Sarah when communications with the sanctuary were finally restored. "No horse has ever escaped our facility before." Sarah listened with growing amazement as reports of Phoenix sightings began to emerge, first in western Kentucky, then southern Indiana, then Illinois. Against all logic, the Mustang appeared to be traveling west, navigating through unfamiliar territory with uncanny determination. "He's trying to come home," Sarah realized, her voice catching. "To Max." Wildlife cameras captured images of Phoenix swimming across rivers, traversing highways during low traffic hours, and even navigating around cities. Horse communities across the Midwest spread the word. Watch for a distinctive Mustang with a white star, traveling alone and moving consistently westward. "It's impossible," Dr. Jensen insisted when Sarah shared the updates. "A domestic horse couldn't navigate across multiple states. Even wild Mustangs only know their specific territories." But Phoenix was neither fully domestic nor truly wild, and he'd been raised by a border collie with an instinctive understanding of distance and direction. Something extraordinary was happening. Back at the recovering sanctuary, Max remained missing. Search teams had found no sign of the border collie along the swollen creek or surrounding areas. Sarah feared the worst but couldn't bring herself to give up hope. 2 weeks after his disappearance, Phoenix was spotted in eastern Nevada, thin and exhausted but still moving purposefully westward. Local ranchers offered food and water, which he accepted briefly before continuing his journey. "He's covered over 1,000 miles, Sarah told her astonished staff. "He's actually coming home." Word spread through the regional rescue community, and volunteers positioned themselves along Phoenix's likely route, offering assistance without attempting to capture him. The Mustang's journey had become a testament to the depths of cross-species bonds. On a misty morning, 24 days after his escape, a volunteer spotted Phoenix on a ridge just 5 miles from Willow Creek. Sarah immediately drove to the location, her heart pounding. The Mustang stood silhouetted against the dawn sky, thinner than she remembered, but otherwise remarkably sound after his incredible journey. "Phoenix," she called softly, approaching slowly with a halter hidden behind her back. The stallion's ears pricked forward at the familiar voice, but he didn't approach. Instead, he nickered his distinctive bark-like call, then turned and trotted purposefully toward the east fork of the creek, away from the sanctuary. "He doesn't want to come home," Sarah realized with confusion. "He's still looking for something." She followed at a distance as Phoenix picked his way down to a dangerous section of the creek where the floodwaters had created a deep ravine. The Mustang paced along the edge, calling repeatedly with increasing urgency. Sarah approached cautiously, fearing the unstable ground near the ravine. As she drew closer, a faint sound answered Phoenix's calls, a weak bark from somewhere below. "Max?" Sarah gasped, rushing to the edge. There, trapped on a narrow ledge 20 feet below, lay the border collie, injured and emaciated but alive. He must have been swept downstream during the flood and somehow managed to climb onto the ledge, where he'd been stranded for over 2 weeks. Phoenix had not come home to the sanctuary. He had come directly to his brother. Sarah stared down at the narrow ledge where Max lay trapped, then at Phoenix standing tensely at the ravine's edge. The border collie, hearing familiar voices, managed a weak tail wag but couldn't stand. After 2 weeks stranded without food, he was near death. "How did you know?" Sarah whispered to Phoenix, who continued his bark-like nickering down to his friend. Sarah called the sanctuary immediately, and within an hour, a rescue team arrived with ropes and emergency equipment. The ravine was too unstable for a human to climb down safely, and the ledge appeared ready to crumble at any moment. We need a helicopter rescue, the team leader decided, but that's hours away, and I don't think the dog has that long. Throughout the discussion, Phoenix paced anxiously, repeatedly approaching the edge and testing the ground with his hoof. His behavior caught the attention of Mark, Sarah's assistant. "He wants to help," Mark observed. "He's looking for a way down." "That's crazy," one of the rescue workers objected. "He's just a horse." But Sarah had witnessed the extraordinary bond between these animals for 5 years. "He's not just a horse," she corrected, "and that's not just a dog. They're brothers." After quickly discussing a dangerous alternative plan, Sarah approached Phoenix with a lightweight rope. With the rescue team's guidance, they fashioned a makeshift harness around the Mustang's chest and shoulders. "This is insane," the team leader muttered. "We're trusting a horse with a rescue operation." The plan was precarious. They would secure the rope to Phoenix and the other end to a rescue worker who would attempt to reach Max. The Mustang would serve as a living anchor, using his strength and weight to stabilize the rescue line. "Phoenix, stand," Sarah commanded firmly, using the voice that Max would use during their training games. The Mustang planted his feet, lowered his head, and braced himself, a posture they had never taught him, but that mimicked how Max would stabilize himself when herding on uneven ground. As the rescue worker began his cautious descent, Phoenix remained remarkably still, seeming to understand the gravity of the situation. When the rope tensed suddenly due to a small rock slide, the Mustang adjusted his position without instruction, leaning back to counter the weight. "He knows exactly what he's doing," Mark whispered in awe. The rescue worker reached Max and secured the weakened dog in a rescue sling. As they began the careful ascent, Phoenix maintained perfect tension on the line, moving slightly backward when signaled by Sarah's voice commands. When Max finally reached the surface, Phoenix released a sound unlike anything they'd heard before. Part nicker, part whinny, but with the emotional urgency of a dog's cry of recognition. He tried to approach immediately, but Sarah held him back until the veterinarian could assess Max's condition. "Severe dehydration, some broken ribs, and infected wounds, but he'll survive," the vet announced. "It's a miracle he lasted this long." Only then did Sarah release Phoenix, who approached his canine brother with extraordinary gentleness. The Mustang lowered his muzzle to touch Max's face, then remained standing protectively beside the stretcher as they carried the border collie to the vehicle. 3 months after the dramatic rescue, Willow Creek Sanctuary hummed with unusual activity. News vans lined the driveway, and visitors from across the country waited eagerly for the day's main event, the official unveiling of the Brothers Forever habitat. Max, now fully recovered, though moving more carefully with his healed ribs, sat proudly beside Sarah as she addressed the gathered crowd. What began as a tragedy, an orphaned foal and a compassionate dog, became a story that has touched hearts worldwide, she began. "Phoenix and Max have taught us that family isn't defined by species, and love knows no boundaries." Behind them stood a newly constructed 10-acre enclosure designed specifically for the inseparable pair, part traditional horse habitat with room for Phoenix to run, part enriched dog environment with agility equipment sized for both animals. A custom-built shelter featured sleeping areas where they could remain close despite their size difference. The fundraising campaign inspired by their story had not only financed this special habitat, but had generated enough donations to secure Willow Creek's operations for years to come. What's more, their journey had sparked a nationwide conversation about cross-species relationships and animal cognition. Jefferson Brooks, the Kentucky horse trainer who had originally purchased Phoenix, stood among the guests of honor. After the rescue, he had formally transferred Phoenix's ownership back to the sanctuary, along with a generous endowment for his care. "I've worked with horses all my life," Brooks told the audience when invited to speak, "but I've never witnessed anything like the bond between these two. Phoenix wasn't just missing his home, he was missing part of himself." Researchers from several universities had already begun studying the pair, documenting their unique communication methods and problem solving abilities. The preliminary findings had challenged conventional understanding of animal cognition and emotional bonds. As the ceremony concluded, Sarah opened the gate to their new habitat. Phoenix entered first, exploring cautiously, with Max following closely. The crowd watched in delighted silence as the Mustang and Border Collie investigated their new home together, perfectly synchronized in their movements. At one point, Phoenix lowered his head to nuzzle Max, who responded with a gentle lick to the horse's muzzle, a greeting ritual they had performed thousands of times, but that still moved Sarah to tears. As evening fell and the visitors departed, Sarah made a final check on the pair. She found them in their custom shelter, Phoenix lying down with his neck curved protectively around Max, who was curled against his brother's warm body, the same position they had assumed on their very first night together. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Share it with someone who understands that family isn't always defined by blood, and help us spread messages of unconditional love and extraordinary bonds that cross all boundaries.